Hey guys, it's Simon and welcome back to another video about the Fleks Entity Component System library where I released a small update last week. And this is the second time I record this video now because some people forgot to unmute their microphone before talking a lot. Great idea, Simon. So what I did with this small release is, first of all, I updated Gradle to the latest version. I think that has no impact on you, I would assume, but 100% I don't know it. But just Fleks internally has now the latest version of Gradle. Then I updated Kotlin to the latest version. I added a small utility function to the component mapper, which is called getOrNull and which follows the normal Kotlin extensions, I would say. For example, for a map where you have a getOrNull, or for maybe a list even with the index, I'm not 100% sure. And what can you do with that? So there's a little code snippet here below. So before, if you could imagine, for me the use case here was you have a system with any configuration of the family. So any entity that has component A or B or C will go inside that system. And maybe you want to execute some code if the entity has, for example, component A. And before, you would need to write something like that. So for example, if entity in mapper, then you need to get the component, of course. So while comp is gleich mapper, da, da, da. So you would need to do something like this, and then you can do something with the component. And if it doesn't have that, then you simply bypass the block. But with Kotlin, we can do something better. So there's the let function available. So now you can do something like this. So from the mapper, you call getOrNull with your entity, which returns either the component, and then you would enter that block here and can execute something. And if it's null, then because of that optional parameter, or how you even call that, so the question mark character, you would then simply bypass that block. So that is more the Kotlin way of doing it, and I like it better, so that's why I introduced this small function. Also, the onInit function was removed. So before, when you wanted to do something in your system constructor and you want to directly access the world because you needed it for whatever reason, then you could not do that in the normal init block of Kotlin constructors because the world was not initialized at that point and you got an exception. Now that is working again. And that what I want to explain to you a little bit, because might be interesting for some people out there. What is the thought process behind such things? Because it sounds like nothing big, but actually the process to get to some of these solutions is not that straightforward. So imagine you have a system like in Fleks, we have this interval system that the user can extend to create his own systems. And inside that system, we need access to the world because maybe, like for example, we need the delta time, the time between two frames that has passed, or we want to create an entity during an update of that system and things like that. One solution would be that, of course, if a system needs that, you need to pass it as an argument. So as simple as that would be a solution, but the downside of that is that a user always needs to pass in the words to any system that gets created, which is a little bit annoying and also not very intuitive, I would say, because you actually add a system to the world. So why do I need to pass the world itself as an argument to the system? So that approach, I did not like that, and that's why it got removed. So that was one of my first drafts that I had. Then before that block here, I had then something like this. So we have a world, again with a private set, because of course the user should not change this reference. It always remains the same. That has the downside, as the name suggests, that it gets initialized later on. So when the system constructor gets called, so the init block gets called, then this variable is not initialized yet. It's simply not possible because Fleks needs to do that afterwards. It needs to create the system, and only once the instance is available, it can set this world property. And that was the reason why I introduced this onInit block, because if you needed the world, you need to have it initialized, and that's why I needed that separate onInit block. And then I thought about that if there would be a different solution, and I found one. Not sure if that is a great solution or not, but I like it because I got rid of the onInit block. And what I do now, so first of all, I have the constant again, which I prefer over the late init variable. And for any system now, it simply gets initialized with the current world, which is a static reference to a world. And what is that? So whenever a world gets initialized or created, let's call it like that, so in a constructor of the world, and before all the systems are created, then this current world reference gets set to the world itself, which currently gets created, which makes sense because all the systems which get created after that step are the systems of that world, and they can then simply access the instance globally, let's say, in a static way. And with that, I could get rid of the onInit block, and users can now use the normal init block, which is, in my opinion, nicer and better. The downside here, of course, is that we have a static variable here, which just lives there forever, but I think it's not that big of a deal. Another downside that I would see, if in theory people are using concurrency and are maybe creating multiple worlds in multiple threads at the same time, then this is of course also error prone, and we would actually synchronize it that there will be no mistakes with that part. But that one I ignored, because who would ever create multiple worlds in multiple threads? I hope that no one is doing that, and if yes, I would be interested in the use case, and of course I already know how to fix it, but since it makes things more complicated, I left it out for the time being. And that was actually one of the bigger changes with that small release. And also, not sure if I mentioned that, the example game that I created also together with Fleks, that one also got now updated to this latest version, which is now 1.0 JVM. Also in the README file, I explained now a little bit better about the two different releases that we currently have in parallel. So there's the JVM version for Fleks that you can use for any backend that uses the JVM, like a normal Java application with libgdx, for example, or Android. So for your phone, that should also work, but it will not work, for example, if you are developing a browser game. There you cannot use the JVM version. There you would need to use the Kotlin multi-platform version, which, for example, also works together with the core game engine, so the Kotlin game engine. And I work there on an update, which I will also release next week or in 2 weeks. It's a smaller one, because the bigger one that I wanted to do, and also the goal that I had to combine those two releases, that we only have then one version of the library. With that one, I will wait a little bit. And the reason is, I think I discussed it a little bit in this issue as well. The reason is that this Kotlin multi-platform stuff is currently in beta stadium, I think, and it's not ready for production. So the developer experience is not that great, in my opinion. There are sometimes very weird errors and mistakes. And also to achieve the goal that I want to have. So my dream idea is that you don't need to write a lot of boilerplate stuff. And like, for example, one of the downsides that I don't like at the moment about the multi-platform branches, that you need to define or add the components to your world, which I don't like a lot. And to get rid of that, I would need to do something with annotation processing. At least that would be one solution. And there I saw, thanks to someone from my YouTube community, so there is something called Kotlin symbol processing. And that guy shared some code with me, and I had a small conversation with him via mail. He did not use that one, from what I remember. He used, I think, Kotlin Poet or something. But from what I read, with multi-platform environment, the Kotlin symbol processing would be the way to go. But also that one is not stable yet and will change, or might change, from what I heard. And the goal, if I'm not wrong, would be that by end of this year, they want to make that more stable, and also they want to make the developer experience better, and that's why I want to wait for that. So once they have finalized it a little bit and polished it, then I will read up those topics and try to combine then the two different versions that we have currently for Fleks and make it into one, which will work most likely with simple processing. So the idea would be that you don't need to do things like I did here, so that you need to specify the components here and other stuff. So the idea would be that you have then normal your data class again of, for example, of a position with an X, blah, blah, blah. So things like that. And the only thing that you need to do is then add an annotation, like for example, add components, and then this symbol processor would pick that up and create the boilerplate code for you that the user does not need to do that himself. And currently that experience is not there where it should be, in my opinion, and that's why I want to wait a little bit until that is stable. Okay, enough talking about that. So that is just a minor update for the Fleks library for the JVM backend, just that you have heard of that. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching and bye bye.